So why don't we get started? Thanks again for everybody who's joining, and thanks to those of you who will be watching this online later as a replay. And welcome to our product update webinar here in December 2025. This is all of us here from Anark. My name is Patrick Dunphy. I'm the head of marketing and sales enablement here at Anark. With us today, super excited to introduce in a moment here Paul Peralt, who is our head of product strategy here at Anark. He's going to take you through what I'll talk about in today's agenda. And then Jim Martin, our director of customer engagement, will also join us throughout today, answering questions potentially, but also at the end to talk about upcoming events and some other details. So for today's agenda, action-packed, and by which I mean we have a lot of live demonstration content courtesy of Paul today. We'll take you through a little bit around digital engineering collaboration, activity-based collaboration. We have a new set of features called Content-Centric Collaboration. Can't wait to have everybody see that. And then we have some sneak previews of things coming in 2026, as well as recent product updates. So Paul's got a lot of things to cover, including making sure we connect on our spotlight moment around our CAD and PLM support, which is continuously expanding. Then after that, as mentioned, Jim will take us through upcoming online and live events that we have. And so without further ado, let's get it started. And I'll hand it over to you, Paul.
Thank you all again for your time and attention and your continued interest in Anark. As Patrick said, I'm really excited to show off the things that we've been working on. So generally, we're going to be going through a number of product updates and demonstrations today. And let's just kick this off by, so for folks of you that may know us or may be new to Anark, we are laser focused on helping our customers to publish and deliver technical data downstream or to fulfill contract requirements, things like that. And also upon digital engineering and digital engineering collaboration. And so throughout Anark's history, we have helped companies to extract and then democratize access to, like I like to use the term, hardcore engineering and manufacturing data, and make that available to people in standards-based formats like 3D PDF and now within the browser, to help people view and interact with and understand digital product definition, which of course leads to higher quality output, higher quality results from people that, maybe contract manufacturers or people that are doing, build to print, things like that. And then also to really reduce the friction and the cost typically involved with being able to, again, view and interact with model-based, 3D model-based definition without having to open that data up in CAD, et cetera. And so one of the things that we want to just touch on, we like to plug the work that our customers do. And so Lockheed has released what they call the model-based enterprise playbook for suppliers. You can see down at the bottom of the slide, there's a link to that. This is a really great piece of work that details their strategy and the decisions that they've made and how they're going to meet the ongoing challenges of lowering the cost of procurement and delivery for different programs, and then also organizing around these ideas of consumables for humans and consumables for machine-based use cases. A couple cool quotes in this document. They highlighted Anark Collaborate is being utilized as part of what they call their external integration hub and their integrated design environment. And so what we're going to see today is Anark Collaborate, which they have then embedded within this larger ecosystem of tools that enable them to communicate and collaborate not only with their suppliers, but also with their customers. So first of all, what we're looking at here is Anark Collaborate, and some folks may have had experience with this or have seen this tool before. We've made a number of improvements here to the user experience. I'm going to describe this as a part one of a multi-phase body of work. And so some of those improvements are this consistent navigation bar on the left, that lets me quickly view files. We're going to talk about spaces, favorites, activities, and things like that. As we have been working with our customers and listening to our customers, we introduced this concept of what we call activity-based collaboration several years ago. And maybe not many people know this, but the genesis for this sort of interface, the inspiration, was really to provide something that was analogous to capturing screenshots in a PowerPoint. We were witness to numerous customers that were essentially, they had something that they wanted to redline or what have you. They'd come over here to say Creo or their CAD tool. They'd grab a screenshot and they might use, the Windows snipping tool. And they might add comments or boxes or other types of graphical markup. And then they'd paste that into a PowerPoint document and then send that to other folks that they're collaborating with. And so the activities-based collaboration capabilities that we see here was really mimicking that type of user experience or that type of use case almost. And so these are what we call snapshot comments. And so if I wanted to create a comment, I could go and upload a photo or something like that, or I'm going to go and add a markup to a 3D model. But this whole process of going through and using these markup tools is really to create, again, what we call a snapshot of state of the model on the screen, and also whatever graphic overlay type markups somebody might make. So I'll exit out of this. So this is primarily a time-based feed, if you will, where the things that I do here are captured in a timeline, again, sort of mimicking that PowerPoint slide-by-slide type interface. And so what we've introduced is this concept of content-centric. And so the whole idea of content-centric collaboration is to really enable people to view and interact and make graphical markups right here within this digital environment. And so this is just publishing template. Some people might be aware of, the templates that can be created for 3D PDFs, things like that. So this environment has similar capability. Right now, I'm using some keyboard shortcuts to activate different, what we call panels or widgets on the left. And so I can interrogate this model just like you would in a 3D PDF or what have you. This also includes some capability where I can select on parts, and in the background, the system is actually doing a search to see if there are any parts that meet this criteria in the system. And so it found one for this. And so I can hover over this link here and essentially display a preview of all the attributes in this particular part. And so if I wanted to open up that detail part, I can just click the link, and then here I go. I'm now interacting with that detail part that's been published into the system. And that's where all the dimensional characteristics are, again, for this specific component. And again, just want to shout out our friends at Action Engineering. This is a great assembly. Some of the other keyboard shortcuts that I have here, of course, I can activate different views, things like that. I can hit those again and collapse that panel. If I want to, print, we have printing capability, which is going to create, what we call some derivatives from that 3D digital model definition right here from within the product. No need to create drawings or so beforehand. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to activate this view. And then there's a number of different things that we can do here to interrogate the model. So I might want to zoom into this part, or select another component and zoom in, or perhaps hide it, show it. There's also things here. Let me just select some of these parts, and I will hide those GDTs and those notes. And the reason I'm doing this again is that if I'm collaborating, there might be a particular view or state of this model that I'd like to create before I create a comment or something like that. And so what I'm doing is I'm just showing off a bunch of these capabilities that are built into the solution now. So I'll just hit the R key, which will restore that. New as well is a live sectioning tool. So I can just open up this section tool, and I've got 6 different planes that I can section. I can also rotate this tool to cut the model in any arbitrary plane that I wish. And so I could, of course, create, what some people call box sections. I'm really sectioning across multiple different planes to create a state of the model. And so this is all available just sort of as part of this new content-centric approach here. And you might have seen some of these tools before. We've got what we call a courtesy measuring capability within this environment. We're going to be adding perpendicular measurements, angular measurements, others coming in 2026. And we're really excited to add those to these environments. Now, the question is that, so as I've shown, I'm kind of like in this read-only mode where I can interrogate the model, look at the BOM, click on things, get this sort of interactive behavior, this interactive cross-highlighting and things like that. And so what we have added is this way to now collaborate on this model. And so I'm going to come over here and click the share button. And so when I do this, it's going to ask me if I want to add this to an existing space or a new space. So I'll just create a very new space here. Let's call this the Ball Valve Collaboration, or CCC. I'll just give this a description of demonstration. When I click the share button, what's happening is it's creating this silo of information that only contains this model. And so this is a container. You could think of it as like a folder, but it's actually a container. And within this container, I can upload additional files. I can add folders. I could fill those folders with things that I upload, from my desktop or what have you. But more importantly, I can come in here to the space details, and then I can start adding additional groups or additional users in the system. So I've got a user in the system that I know is a supplier. And for that supplier, I will give them certain permissions within this space. So they'll be able to view the items in the space. They'll be able to review, add markups and comments to items in the space. And they'll be able to download items that are in this space. And so again, what I've done here is created this, if anybody uses Box or Google Drive or things like that, I've essentially got a container, and I can share the contents of that container with a discrete list of individuals or groups. And then for each individual or group, I can enumerate the different access permissions that they have within this space. So now that, I've added some users, and, again, I'll just kind of take you through some of the capabilities here. This environment now supports what we call 3D and also overlay or 2D type of comments. And so for the very first thing, maybe what I'll do is I'll select this part, and I'm going to zoom into this part real close. And maybe I've got something that I'd like to say about this particular part. So now I will say, is the PN for this item. And so that is now a 3D comment that exists within this environment. Again, just as an example, I'm going to add what we call an overlay comment. So down here, I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit the restore button. So that sort of restores the original state of the view that I was in. And so maybe for this, I'm going to isolate this particular part. Let's just do that. And, I'll zoom in, and now I've got what we call is an overlay markup. And the thing that makes this, why we refer to this as an overlay, I'll just say a nice logo and accept that. And so what makes this an overlay? So it actually exists in 3D space, but what it's doing is it's capturing essentially the configuration of the scene that I'm in, and it's adding a markup on top of that. And you can see here when I rotate, that markup disappears because it's essentially pinned to the orientation of the model or of the view when I create that comment. Now I'm going to close this down here, and let's open up one that I've done a little bit more.
Hey, Paul,
Yes.
real quick, just as I'm seeing you go through a lot of these things, in that last example, you kept kind of reorienting yourself back to the overlay markup. How were you doing that? I think I saw you clicking the things on the right, but I'm not sure exactly if everybody saw how you were doing that so that you could get back in there.
Yeah, so great question. So every comment, let me just close down the table of components there. So every comment corresponds with a graphical markup that's been created either as a 3D markup or as an overlay markup. So again, here I'm in the live 3D digital environment. I might choose to hide something or isolate or what have you. I'm going to hit the R button to restore. But now when I click on one of these comments, it takes me back to the view and the state of that model that that comment was created in. And so again, I can zoom in and out here. You'll see that this is, what we call a flat to screen type note. And if I wanted to, I could come over here and activate that overlay markup again. Now, probably the better place to show this is in the context of a sort of a more elaborate or a more fully defined collaborative experience. So what we're looking at here is a complete missile. This is probably about 1,000 occurrences, a couple hundred components. This was published out of Windchill. And in so doing, you can see here that we've got this hierarchical representation of information. So this is what we call a top level cover sheet, which contains PLM attributes that were harvested from the WT part in this case. It also includes a bill of material, again, harvested out of Windchill. As I mentioned, there are several hundred unique components in this structure. And so this is the full recursive bill of material, not just top level. And so this is data, again, not CSV, not Excel. This is data that was harvested right out of Windchill. The integration also published a 3D PDF as part of this package, but then also, again, provides this interactive digital environment here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the feedback panel, and you can see here that there's about 20 different comments and replies and things like that that have been made. But while I'm in this environment, I have a couple of different ways to see all these different comments and things like that that are happening in this content-centric environment. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button, which will essentially show all of the 3D comments that have been created in one view. And so you see here, I can rotate this model and I see these different pinned comments that are attached to various different places within this missile. And so one of the great things about this environment is that there's just this, again, that sort of cross-highlighting relationship. I'm going to click on one of these items, and you'll see here that this comment turns red. I'll do that again. So I'll click here. You see that there's a red border that comes and highlights that comment. And so this provides me a way to just kind of see, okay, so this comment corresponds with that item in the comment history here. But when I see that, I can now click on this item, and now it will activate that saved configuration and that saved view of the state of the model when that 3D comment was made. And so just to be clear, this is a real 3D comment. This is not a snapshot. It's not a capture. This is a flat to screen note that has been created and pinned to this particular wire harness. And of course, this comment here is asking, hey, do we need a strain relief piece of hardware to maintain the bend radius of that cable? And so each one of these items in this list corresponds to a different component here in this data package. So starting at the top, this item, so this was again, a 2D, we call it a highlight type comment where I just highlighted this text. And so I typed in a comment, shouldn't this be JMS-X? And you can see here that Chris replied to that and acknowledged it. There's also an indicator here that this has been completed, this item, and I'm going to show you some capabilities here in just a moment to disposition and adjudicate all the comments that people make in these collaborative exchanges. But again, so this one relates to a selection of text in this PLM attribute data. I've got another comment here where I've actually asked the question, is this quantity a top level quantity or the full assembly quantity? And so again, this is now a comment on a different, what we call component within this data package. And then here again, this is another comment. This is a 3D comment in this model that is actually using a user created cross section using that tool that I showed you before. So each one of these, again, is sort of capturing the state of that model, whether, what parts I've shown or hidden or what have you. And again, we can create leadered flat to screen notes. I can also create, basically just a unleadered note that, just kind of looks like a, flat to screen note without a leader. And so each one of these, again, is we're capturing the history, capturing all the comments, all the graphical markup. You'll notice here that you can use different, text styles, bold, different colors, underlines, things of that nature. And so here's another one in the BOM, shouldn't this be as required? It's a consumable. This is a very robust set of tools that works across what we refer to as all of these different content types. And again, those content types are, 3D, hardcore model-based definition, digital engineering data, as well as data that accompanies this in the package. And again, totally up to customers about what they would like to publish, whether they'd like to include, just models or downloadable items and things like that. So let me just jump into a different environment here. And so I'll close this down and let's open up one that's got a little bit more going on here. So I'll open up this. This is again the detail part from that ball valve assembly. And there's a couple things here that I'd like to show off. So first, I'm just going to hide that panel. So we're just here and I've got this thing called the occurrence viewer. And so this isn't just, visual data, this isn't just, 3D graphics. Anark translators and what we call our advanced MBD adapters harvest all of the semantic data out of these parts and assemblies as well. And so what I did here is I just filtered for all the product characteristics in this model. And so instead of, say, navigating this model by all of the captures that were published, and again, these captures were defined in Creo as combination states. As an alternative, I can use this list of product characteristics to perform a tour of this model. And again, when I'm doing this, this really helps me not only interrogate the model, but also better understand the design and the manufacturing intent and the requirements for how to manufacture and deliver a part that meets those requirements. So again, this deep semantic information that we have available enables several different ways to, again, interrogate this model to better understand the design intent, et cetera. So now I'm going to close this. I'll open back up our feedback panel. And so we have what we call overlay 2D. So this is a box essentially, or an annotation that's been drawn around the export control notice. As soon as I rotate this, that annotation, that overlay disappears because it's no longer relevant for the view or the orientation of the model that we made it on. Of course, we can also create 3D annotations on actual GDT. So this is a 3D annotation that is referenced to the entire export control note that was published. And so as we go through here, you'll see that there are these indented comments. So these are replies to the parent comment. And one of the neat things here is that, so I can click on this, which is like a quote, and it will highlight the reply that it references. And so there's all of this great, again, relationship under the covers here that the system is keeping track of, who replied to what and what was quoted or what was replied to, et cetera. So all of the what we would refer to as the model geometry, the GDT, the supplemental geometry, you can comment on all of that stuff. Now, one of the things that we also heard, with folks that were using the activities-based collaboration solution is that, we had this idea that we were, sort of like capturing snapshots and pasting them into sort of quasi PowerPoint slides. But when you have a lot of people collaborating, you really want to have a way to come in and then adjudicate and disposition each one of these comments so that you can quickly arrive at next steps or business outcomes or identify follow-up tasks in an external tool or what have you. And so I'll just point out a couple of things here. So each comment has a number of what we call dispositionable characteristics. So I'll click on this item and let's just go into edit mode. So the first one is what we call arbitrary metadata tagging. I can just add a new tag here. Let's say we're reviewing for critical to quality characteristics. So I just type in CTQ here and I can create that tag, and now it gets added to the set of tags that are associated with this particular comment. Each one of these tags then is then available for others, so that they could add their own or to reference tags that are already in the system. Now, in addition to that, you'll see here that there are some drop downs. So this is essentially a way to prioritize, assign a priority or a criticality to a comment. And again, folks with the proper permissions within this environment are able to do this. We also have a series of elements that can designate whether a particular thing has been accepted or canceled, completed or rejected. So I'll just post this, and you can see here that we can assign these to people as well. Now, each one of these comments, of course, can have all of these different types of characteristics applied. And so if I'm collaborating with several people, and we've got hundreds of comments here, I'm going to want to be able to filter by priority, or perhaps, maybe to show things that have been rejected or completed or canceled. And so whenever I do that, I don't know if you can see this happening, but it's filtering those in real time. It's instantaneous. So it's a very interactive environment. Let's clear that. I might also want to go here and show all of the tags that were related to, say, critical to quality. You see that one comment that has that critical to quality tag meets that criteria. Anytime you filter something, you might wish to sort that data set or that result, ascending or descending. So now what I'm seeing is newest on top versus oldest on top. This interface also provides what we like to call is this inspector view, which is really a tabular representation of all of the comments and all of the dispositionable characteristics. And so I can just quickly and easily sort by author, component, timestamp, priority, status, tags, assignee, et cetera. And so the point of this, again, is to provide this horizontal CAD and PLM neutral solution such that organizations can publish data into this environment, just like they do with 3D PDFs. And once the data is in this environment, we can then have these collaborative exchanges, albeit in a totally secure, what we call a fileless environment that doesn't require that I'm distributing documents to people and sending them out and then collecting them and then bringing all those red lines and comments back together, say like in a PDF drawing or so. This environment is really trying to provide the digital thread equivalent of that document-based collaborative experience.
So there, Paul, there's a question that came up. It's the usual question that comes up. I felt like it was the right time in terms of what you just mentioned. This data was managed in the PLM system. Some of it you've mentioned, some of the PLM systems that we work with, but what's our vision, or how does this work back and forth right? So how does this work with PLM to, let's say, complement the change management process or any other workflow process versus just be off onto the side?
And so Anark's strategy is not to warehouse this data. It's our intent, again, is to be this horizontal meeting ground solution where people can gather and mark up and comment. And then once that's done, is to federate that data back into PLM, where you might want to attach it to the item revision or add it to a change process or what have you. And so what we have today is this ability to create these PDF reports. And what we're working on is an ability to export these data right here, everything that we showed you, as a machine readable representation. So that's probably going to be CSV if we'd like to export this to disk. But then also we're going to be able to suck the data out of this space using our PLM integration and then federate it back to the original item revision that was published into the system to provide that closed loop, publish, collaborate, and then bring that set of comments and actionable after dispositioning and adjudicating. You might wish to publish all of these just to provide a complete sort of history, but you might also wish to federate just the outcomes. And so those outcomes might be those, 4 or 5 comments that were accepted. That's going to be coming in 2026, along with a whole bunch of new things that we'll show you here in just a moment. This is more than just sort of an environment to just view, let's say, technical data. We have customers that are publishing work instructions into this environment. And so before publishing those work instructions, you want to be able to review the work instruction and make corrections or suggest, changes or what have you. And so this activity is really emblematic of what some of our customers are doing. They'll publish an animated work instruction into this environment. These work instructions are authored in our Anark Workstation product. In those work instructions, somebody is enumerating a set of different sequences or steps. And within each step, they might have, occurrences of the assembly that are being added. There might be some elaborate animation like this to show welding and tacking on, different components and things like that. And so these types of publications, just like a 3D PDF, you can publish, work instructions into this environment. But where I'm going with this is that you want to be able to collaborate in a way that is model based. And so I'll go back here into this environment and let's go and open up a different space. Got a 3D work instruction, content-centric collaborative experience on that same work instruction. In this environment, we can play each step, things like that. But now I can add 3D markup to this. This is not a screenshot. This is not a capture or a snapshot. This is, one of our 3D comments. And so it just provides a much more intuitive and I think much more direct experience with that digital product definition data. And then again, to be able to facilitate people reviewing and marking these things up before they release it, that's where we see a lot of value for solutions like this.
So we did have I've been trying to figure out the right place to put these. We did have another question earlier that kind of got to what use cases are supported, right? So what I think would be interesting in terms of the what use cases are supported question, spaces is a pretty generic term for what this set of capabilities is, but that's by design because whatever your collaboration process or workflow is, you can create a space for that and it becomes whatever you fill it with. Can you kind of connect that to what we do with templates and our vision around templates and what you just showed in terms of 2 different versions for 2 different use cases and tie that in to answer the question around what use cases could be supported here?
Yes, so that's a great question. It touches on a system extensibility story as well. So one thing that we've learned in our experience supporting 3D PDFs is that customers want to be able to design a deliverable that displays and provides information and interactivity that is specific to particular use cases or particular types of deliverables. And so this technical data package notion, that might be something that contains a bunch of attachments. It might have buttons in that PDF document to show the attachments panel or to show related documentation or things like that. And so the same is true in this environment. It's that we want to have this ability to port different application experiences or different templates. Generally speaking, this assembly was published into a template that looks like it does here. We'll notice that this other component was published into a template that looks a little bit different, right? We've got a different set of widgets over here that provide different functional characteristics, etc. As an example, this movie is demonstrating the extent of the system capability as we speak. So one of our partners, Engineering Methods in Europe, has been working on what's called the Cascade project and something known as the digital data package for several years. And so they built their own bespoke application on top of Anark Collaborate that really has no similarity to anything that we saw before. Not only in terms of the user experience and the user interface, the digital data package also incorporates a completely different data model. And so our environment can incorporate that data model. And what's going on here in this environment is that really where a digital data package is different than a technical data package is that the digital data package, the goal there is to be able to provide a standard way to describe the entire systems engineering requirements to inspection, all of the different related characteristics of that product definition that includes not only the CAD, the requirements, the information that you might define in Cameo. And so this application that engineering has built is a way to ingest all that information and then to create relationships between all of that such that a user can interrogate the systems model that describes this Mars rover right here. This environment was designed to be extensible, and so we're going to expand that extensibility, coming here in 2026. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, and then some. This is great. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so the phrase "there's a space for that" may have to come into play, and then app experience to go with it, based on what you're saying. Good stuff.
Yes. In the space, maybe just to recap a little bit, the idea behind a space is to provide a siloed area. So you might have some cases, hundreds of thousands of items published into the system. In our experience, working with customers in the industry, I would say there are a variety of different access control methodologies that people utilize or have deployed within their organizations. And so this environment, we could say that we support 3 completely distinct access control models out of the box. One of those is that some of our customers will define access control privileges within PLM for, say, internal people or even suppliers. They'll have a record that says, John Doe can access this information and download or take possession of this information. And so those privileges are enumerated and defined up in PLM. This product can be configured to delegate all access control to that external access control authority. So let's say like one mode. Another mode is that we can control access based upon essentially just configured roles within the system. As a supplier, I might be assigned to a group, and that group contains a role that might say, hey, you can view and you can review, but you can't download anything. You can't take possession of any of this data. And then the third way is what we call this local access control model within the space. And so again, a space creator, somebody who has the privilege or the permission to create spaces in the system, they can then add individuals in the space and then define for each user what they should be able to do within the space. And so it's this very flexible, but ultimately out-of-the-box configurable solution that we offer.
Excellent. Hey, by the way, bonus points. You just answered another question on access control without me asking it. So good work there. And then letting you know, we've got about probably 7 minutes left to get through the rest of the updates and some of the slides that you have, and then we can hand it over to Jim just to take us home.
Okay, so I'm going to, so this is all what we referred to as multi-phase approach to extend this application, adding new improvements to the user experience. And so what you're going to see now is where we're going in 2026. So what we're looking at here are a collection of user interface mockups. These are being created in a tool called Figma. And so this set of mockups that we're looking at are where Anark is going in 2026 is a complete application overhaul to enhance and modernize the user experience. Also, one of the things that we've heard from our customers that we'd really like to reduce whatever training might be required to onboard people within the system. And so this has been inspired directly from common tools like almost everybody uses: email clients, Microsoft Outlook. A lot of folks have experience using Box.com or Google Drive or what have you. And so it's taken inspiration from those environments. And I would also say that this isn't a dream that we have. This is a working environment. So this is the new, what we're referring to as Collaborate 2. And substantial progress has already been made on this environment. And we'll have more information about when this is going to be scheduled for release in Q1. So fully functional environment work is already, substantially underway here. We're going to take advantage of all the available screen real estate and hardcore engineering and manufacturing data. We'll be taking center stage along with this extensibility story where we're going to be able to build and deliver apps within this environment. So let me go back to our slide deck, and I just want to touch on a number of things that we've done recently. So added support for Creo 11. We are work in progress to support this new object type in Creo called Creo Tables. We've made a bunch of performance improvements. We've added a brand new watermarking capability. There are new what we call advanced MBD formats that we've added. So this is going to dovetail into the next slide. So specifically for our Dassault customers, we have added a brand new Step 242 translator that we license a toolkit from Dassault Spatial. And so this new option is tuned for Dassault environments, so CATIA V5 and the 3DX platform. We've also developed some CAT scripts to extract stacking tables, composite ply tables, things like that. Some of our customers are utilizing those. Patrick mentioned earlier to continue to add to the mature and robust and deeply integrated extraction solutions that we have developed here at Anark for a long time. Another, maybe just an overview slide here is sort of where we're going with. You look on the left here, these are like what we would refer to as sources of data. And then the column on the right is really these endpoints where we'd like to publish those. Continuing to add improvements to our 3D PDF solutions. As you've seen, continuing to add capabilities into the Collaborate solution. And we're also going to be supporting what we call a standalone HTML solution in 2026. And we'll have more information to share about that next year. Generally, and again, this sort of, embracing having this laser focus on hardcore digital engineering data and being able to publish that into standards-based formats to democratize access to it, but also restrict access to it and to make sure that people have these secure environments to view and interact with data where you don't have to take possession of an artifact. And so in a nutshell, for 2026, these are our three primary areas of work. First of all, I use a lot of software tools, and there are some tools that I love to use. And so Anark Collaborate, we're making, some substantial improvements to the user interface and, making it totally familiar to people that use tools like Microsoft Outlook and Box, continuing to focus on performance and security. Some of those things involve easier Anark collaboration upgrades and continued performance improvements for large 3D PDFs. We're going to start working on what we call server-side rendering for Collaborate, where that interactive 3D graphical display, that's actually going to be taking place upstream on the server. And, if there's any people that play cloud video games in the audience, we'll be, utilizing very similar technology as that. And then again, this focus on having API first, data first, extensible solutions that support our customers' desire to create custom experiences for the recipients of the data that they publish and make available. And that will come in the form of what we're calling app builder and templates, providing that closed loop feedback to PLM. We're going to be taking our first step to import data from some QIF files, and we'll have more information about that early next year. And then, as I mentioned, HTML to disk. And so I think at this point, Jim Martin, you are up next, I think.
Yeah, we'll get Jim to bring us home on some of the things that are happening out there and what's coming up next for Anark.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And we do have a number of questions. We did answer most of them, and what we'll do is we'll summarize all those and send them out. The one thing we wanted to do first off is thank Action Engineering. If you haven't seen it yet, they had a project that they worked on where they created a ball valve assembly, and they want people to go through and download all the original models, which are in Creo, plus the derivatives that some of them are coming from Anark. And we've been showing this model with the Action branding on it, but they're actively encouraging people to do this. And this is going to lead into the MBE Summit next April at MXD, where people are going to be doing a lot of different scenarios surrounding this ball valve. So thank you to Action Engineering. And so we do have some additional webinars and other in-person events coming up. We are going to have what we're going to call the 2026 kickoff webinar, where we're going to go deeper into what Paul's been talking about today with content-centric collaboration. We were going to start to talk a little bit about Anark Publish Gateway. We'll get to that a little bit more after the new year. That's a different way of publishing that's unique and makes it a little bit simpler for people to do publication of this type of content directly from their desktop. Go ahead and sign up now at the very bottom at anark.com resources. You can see all of our events. The webinar in February, we're gonna let you know about that shortly. We're going to be at 3D CIC. We're going to be sponsoring that. We're going to be sponsoring Defense Manufacturing. We are sponsoring MB Summit and the PTC user event. So definitely go to our resources. You'll be able to see the events that we have coming up and a lot of different blog content. And we're going to start to post more short clips on what Paul just talked about today, what we're going to be calling model-based minutes that will give you short insights as to what we're doing in the future. And that's it.
Yeah, we did have one more bonus question that came in because you flashed up the plan for QIF, Paul, which is a fun one for sure. And one of the audience members asked about what part of QIF, as we've discussed, there's many parts, right? What's our plan there in terms of first pass on what we'll do with QIF?
I'd say the way that I answer that question is that we view ourselves as providing this human in the loop type of use cases where there may be data flying around and machines consuming that data, but we firmly believe, and this has been reinforced through decades in this industry, that people need to see what's in the data, what's in the files. And so the first steps with QIF will be to be able to view the original model and the sort of inspection plan, the defined inspection plan or inspection process, essentially side by side within this environment, and to enable people to, again, view and review that, mark it up to ensure that the document, the QIF, the inspection plan that will be released, reflect the best that it can be. The second one is to be able to view and visualize inspection data that's been collected in the QIF and to be able to view that adjacent to its source model so that, again, there's this ability to visualize the data and the source digital product definition in context for that human in the loop type use case.
Fantastic. Yeah, QIF plans and QIF MBD was mentioned. So I think that's squarely in the path of what we're trying to do here. Excellent. Good. Well, Paul, thanks a ton today. Thanks everybody online who attended. And thanks as well, Jim, right? Great stuff coming up real soon. Can't wait to see the next sessions that we have going. And until then, have a safe and happy holidays, everyone. And thanks for joining us here at Anark today. We'll talk to you again next time. Take care all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for your time and attention. Appreciate it.